He didn't need a spotlight. He didn't need a script, and he never asked for permission, because Jimmy Johnstone was fire. Not the kind you control, the kind you admire from a distance, because getting too close meant getting burned. At 5'4", with hair like flame and feet like poetry, he looked like a boy among giants. But once the ball touched his boots, he didn't just play football, he made it vanish. They called him Jinky, not out of affection, but reverence. Because when he moved, everything else stopped mattering. Tactics, formations, fear, all erased by a single flick of his hips. He didn't run, he danced. Didn't dribble, he bewitched. Didn't follow the game, he rewrote it. Celtic Park wasn't a stadium when he played. It was a theater, and he wasn't a player. He was the headline act. Billy McNeil once said, "With the ball at his feet, Jinky could make the angels weep." Brilliant, reckless, unrepeatable. And no matter what came after the regrets, the silence, the fall, one truth was never questioned. When Jimmy Johnstone was on the pitch, magic was real. Subscribe, because once in a generation, football gives us a miracle and lets us remember it forever. Before the noise, before the medals, before they called him Jinky, there was View Park, a mining village in Lanarkshire, Scotland. Stone houses, grey skies, coal in the lungs, football in the blood. James Connolly Johnstone was born on the 30th of September 1944. The youngest of 5, raised with nothing but grit, a shy smile, and a ball that never left his feet. He was small, red-haired, an easy target until the ball rolled to him, because then everything changed. He didn't run, he floated, didn't shoot, he danced around defenders until they forgot where they were. At 13, Celtic scouts spotted him. By 15, he joined their youth system, and by 1962, aged just 18, he made his senior debut. Not tall, not powerful, but unstoppable. He wasn't a prospect. He was a fire the club couldn't explain, only unleash. Some coaches tried to tame him, but one man didn't. Johnstone. He saw exactly what Jimmy was, and with a nod, he gave him his blessing. "Go on then, son. Go make them dizzy." He didn't ask for attention. He didn't smile for headlines. He just wanted the ball, and once he had it, no one could take it back. By 1962, Jimmy Johnstone had broken into the first team. He was raw, unpredictable, a blur of feints, flicks, and fury. But it wasn't until 1965, when Johnstone returned as manager, that the legend truly took shape. Stein didn't want caution. He wanted brilliance. And in the smallest player on the pitch, he saw something priceless. He handed Jimmy the number 7 shirt, and from that moment, it wasn't just a number. It was a warning. Between 1965 and 1969, Celtic were unstoppable. They swept up everything. In a 1968 European Cup clash with Red Star Belgrade, he slalomed through 4 defenders to set up a goal, leaving Celtic Park chanting, "Jinky." League titles, Scottish Cups, League Cups, but at the heart of it all was Jinky. He didn't beat defenders, he embarrassed them, twisted them into knots, then came back around just to do it again. Fans didn't just cheer, they leaned forward because they never knew if they were about to witness brilliance or something greater. By 1966, he was a superstar. By 1967, a force of nature. There were faster players, stronger ones too. But no one alive could move like Jimmy Johnstone when Celtic Park held its breath and waited for the magic to begin. By 1967, Celtic had conquered Scotland. But Johnstone wasn't building a team for Scotland. He was building one for immortality. On 25th May 1967, in Lisbon, Portugal, they faced Inter Milan in the European Cup final. Inter were everything Celtic weren't. Celtic attacked like a storm. In Lisbon's sweltering heat, with 45,000 roaring, Jinky moved like a phantom. Disciplined, defensive, machine-like. After 7 minutes, Celtic went behind a penalty, 1-0 down. For the next 83 minutes, Celtic attacked like a storm. And in the middle of it all was Jimmy Johnstone. He didn't score. He didn't need to. He stretched the pitch with every step, dragged defenders out of position, made space where there was none, beat men on the inside, then out then again, just to remind them who he was. He tormented Inter's Facchetti, pulling their defense apart like a conductor breaking a symphony. By the final whistle, Celtic had won 2-1. the first British team to lift the European Cup. 11 players, all born within 30 miles of Glasgow, but none like Jinky. That night, he didn't just play football. He rewrote what football could be. His brilliance earned him third place in the 1967 Ballon d'Or, behind only the world's elite. He had it all: the medals, the headlines, the love of a nation. But Jimmy Johnstone didn't live in balance. He lived on the edge, and even fire, if it burns too long, begins to lose control. By the early 1970s, the magic was still there, but the cracks were showing. The nights out grew longer. The missed training sessions harder to excuse. The brilliance came in flashes, but the consistency began to slip. Johnstone, loyal to the end, stood by him. Because he knew, if Jinky played, Celtic always had a chance. But football doesn't forgive, and time never waits. Over nearly a decade with Scotland, he earned 23 caps and scored 4 goals. But fate and folly meant he never played on the game's grandest stage. In 1965, he debuted for Scotland versus England, a 3-2 loss, his fire just beginning. Between 1971 and 1974, his influence faded. The jinx were fewer, the bursts of genius rarer, and the weight of it all, expectation, regret, drink, began to pull him down. In the stands, the fans never turned. They still rose when he touched the ball. But deep down, they knew his spark was fading. He wasn't past it, but he was drifting, and the boy who once made defenders dizzy for fun was now fighting to stay in the game he once ruled with ease. By 1974, he had one last chance. One last shot to show the world who he really was. Scotland had qualified for the World Cup, and Jinky, even in decline, was still their most gifted player. He was in the squad, in training, focused. In May 1974, at Scotland's World Cup training camp in Largs, it all slipped. After heavy drinking at the national camp, Jinky and a few teammates took a rowing boat and drifted into the Firth of Clyde. In 1974, his final Scotland goal sank England 2-0, a fleeting glimpse of his fire. No jackets, no scents, just laughter, alcohol, and open water. The wind picked up. The boat drifted too far. It stopped being funny. The Coast Guard had to rescue them. The headlines wrote themselves. Scotland's shame. He wasn't charged, but he was dropped. No World Cup, no second chance, no redemption. Not in 1966, not in 1970. In 1970, he dazzled in the European Cup final, but Feyenoord's 2-1 win dimmed Celtic's dream. And now, not in 1974, it became the deepest regret of his life. I let my country down, I let myself down. I'll never forget it. He sat alone, the headlines burning in his mind, the World Cup stage forever out of reach. And with that, the door to the world stage closed forever. In 1975, after more than a decade of magic, Jimmy Johnstone left Celtic. In 1975, he briefly joined Sheffield United, but the spark was dim. 515 appearances, 129 goals, 9 league titles, a European Cup, and yet there was no parade, no farewell speech, just a quiet exit from the stage he once owned. In 1975, he chased the game in America with San Jose Earthquakes. Then between 1977 and 1978, he drifted through brief spells at Shettleston, Dundee, Shelbourne, and Elgin City. But the fire was gone. His legs couldn't lie anymore. And the crowds, they watched politely instead of rising in awe. There were no agents, no riches, no safety net. He worked odd jobs painting houses, driving vans, telling stories in Glasgow pubs where old men still remembered what magic looked like when it wore number 7. Johnstone later said, when Johnstone was in full flow, there wasn't a defender alive who could touch him. The drink never left him. Not fully. Not even when he tried. It didn't scandalize him. It just followed him. Quiet and corrosive. The press stopped calling, and the man who once turned defenders to shadows, no bitterness, no drama, just silence. And even that he carried with grace. By 2000, the first signs appeared. A tremble here, a slow step there, the beginning of the end. Motor Neurone Disease, the cruelest kind. It didn't strike fast. It crept in, stealing his voice, his movement, his strength. The fans watched it happen, slowly, helplessly. But Jimmy never asked for pity. He still showed up to matches, events, interviews, signing shirts with trembling hands, smiling for cameras even when he could barely hold the pen. And when he couldn't speak anymore, the fans spoke for him. They sang his name at Celtic Park. They sang, "There's only one Jinky Johnstone," their anthem echoing across decades. Held fundraisers, raised statues before the end came, because they knew what he meant, not just to Celtic, but to football. He was carried onto the pitch in a wheelchair, and as 60,000 stood, his eyes filled, but he didn't cry. He was still Jinky, still fire, even if the flame now lived in their memories. On the 13th of March 2006, Jimmy Johnstone passed away. Age 61, surrounded by family, and followed by silence that didn't last long, because the moment he left, his legend got louder. Jimmy Johnstone was never meant to be safe. He wasn't built for systems, he wasn't shaped by caution, he was built for chaos, for beauty, for magic. He drank, he stumbled, he fell, but when he played, the world stopped. And that's what matters. He never played in a World Cup, never lifted a Ballon d'Or. He didn't need to, because he gave Celtic its soul, gave Scotland its joy, and gave football one of its last true artists. In 2002, Celtic fans voted him their greatest ever player. A statue now stands outside Celtic Park, not towering, but perfect. In December 2011, 5 years after his death, the tribute was unveiled. Low to the ground, head down, ball glued to his foot. "He brought so much joy to so many," said Henrik Larsson. "To be remembered like that, it's the greatest legacy." In 2004, Scotland's Football Hall of Fame honoured him, his fire still burning. That's how they remember him. Not for the noise, not for the mistakes, but for the magic. Because he didn't follow the script. He was the script wild, improvised, unforgettable, and for anyone who saw him play, you don't need stats. You don't need clips. You just need one name. Jinky. Subscribe because legends like this never fade. They just wait to be remembered.